My name is Eleanor Whitmore. It's so lovely to meet you.
Have you ever brushed against a table and felt your arm tear slightly? Looked down and realized a small bruise appeared where nothing should have happened, and felt a quiet panic rising because your skin, the very thing that protects you, feels fragile, like paper, thin, dry, and almost translucent in the light, and wondered if this is what aging really looks like, if this is how it's supposed to feel, if there's nothing you can do. I'm 74, and I know exactly how that feels, because for decades, I ignored the small signs, the tightness after a shower, the dry patches that never healed, the rough hands that looked older than my heart felt, the tiny tears that scared me more than any wrinkle ever could. And it took me 50 years to understand that my skin wasn't failing because of age. It was failing because of what I had been doing to it every single day without knowing, because habits, the same ones I thought were harmless, were quietly stripping my skin of its strength, drying it, weakening it, making it vulnerable. And I want to tell you exactly what I discovered, because you don't have to wait 50 years to protect your skin. You can start tonight, and the changes are simple, practical, and powerful if done consistently. When I was 24, I loved the sun. I would lie outside for hours, letting the warmth soak into my skin, thinking that a healthy glow meant youth, vitality, and beauty. And I never thought about sunscreen. I never thought about the long-term effects. I never imagined that the tan I love so much would one day betray me with dryness, thinning, and fragility. And I didn't even notice it in my 30s when my soaps got stronger, my cleansers stripped every bit of natural oil from my face, when the tight, squeaky feeling after washing felt like proof of cleanliness, when I told myself that dryness meant purity, that tightness meant care, when in reality, it meant damage. And by the time I reached my 50s, my skin had lost resilience I didn't even know I valued. In my 50s, I began experimenting with creams, expensive jars, cheap jars, whatever the ads promised would erase decades from my face, and I rubbed them faithfully every night, massaging in hopes of reversal, only to find that within minutes, my skin returned to that dry, tight, fragile feeling, and I began to wonder if I was doing something wrong, if I was missing something, if maybe age had truly won, and I blamed time, as most of us do, as if it were an enemy. But I hadn't realized that every long, hot shower, every harsh scrub, every sugary treat, every skipped glass of water, every aggressive cleansing routine had chipped away at my skin's natural barrier. And that barrier, once gone, doesn't just come back overnight. Then at 68, something small but frightening happened. I was reaching into a lower cabinet in my kitchen, and my forearm brushed against the wooden edge. Nothing dramatic, nothing out of the ordinary. I had bumped into things all my life, but this time I felt a sting. I looked down, and there it was. A small scrape, already darkening. My skin looked almost translucent, fragile, like tissue paper. I remember holding my arm, staring at it, a mix of shock and fear rising inside me, and thinking, when did this happen? When did my skin become this weak? That night, I sat quietly on my bed, legs stretched out, and I noticed small purplish marks along my shins. I couldn't remember any bumps, no falls, no impact, just small bruises appearing where they shouldn't. I realized then that my skin was no longer just aging. It was vulnerable. It was fragile. It was screaming silently for care. I hadn't given it for decades, and I knew I had to change something before it got worse. I started reading everything I could find, listening to dermatologists, nutritionists, and seniors who had healthy skin well into their 70s and 80s. And I discovered something shocking. After 65, your skin doesn't just wrinkle. It loses collagen at a much faster rate. The oil glands slow down, moisture escapes, and the healing process that used to take days now takes weeks. Every habit I had relied on in my 40s and 50s, long hot showers, harsh soaps, scrubbing with rough towels, sugary snacks, skipping hydration. These same habits now accelerated damage, made the skin thinner, more fragile, and less resilient. The first change I made was simple, but life-changing. I lowered my shower temperature, not cold, just lukewarm, so my skin would retain the little oils it still produced. I stopped rubbing my skin with towels aggressively. Instead, I gently patted it dry, leaving a touch of moisture to lock in with cream immediately after drying. This alone made a noticeable difference. My hands stopped feeling like paper. My forearms were less tight. My skin felt calmer. The second change was internal. I reduced added sugars. Just small changes. A sweet tea here, a pastry there. Intentionally choosing alternatives that nourished rather than harmed. I added healthy fats. Things like olive oil over vegetables, a handful of nuts, half an avocado with lunch. Within weeks, the dryness lessened. The bruises faded faster, and I noticed a subtle glow, not a miracle, not dramatic, but enough to tell me that protecting skin after 65 is not impossible. It just requires understanding how it changes and working with it, not against it. The third change was diet hydration. I increased water intake, natural juices, foods high in antioxidants and vitamins, and noticed a difference in texture, elasticity, and overall appearance. It wasn't magic. It was consistency. It was understanding that every tiny habit mattered, that every small decision impacted the barrier that protects your body. By the time I implemented these changes fully, I realized something profound. Protection matters more than reversal. When you're over 65, stopping decline, slowing fragility, keeping the skin resilient and strong, that is victory. Not the 25-year-old perfection we chase in ads, but calm, healthy, functional skin that protects you, nourishes you, and lets you live without fear of tearing or bruising at the slightest touch. If your arms feel fragile, if your face looks tight or dry, if your hands look older than your spirit feels, don't wait. You can implement these simple steps tonight. Turn down the water, pat dry, moisturize immediately, reduce sugar, increase healthy fats, hydrate, and you will feel the difference, not overnight, not instantly, but steadily, with patience. Your skin will start to behave differently, become stronger, calmer, more resilient.